Thanks, Terry. I'll call to order the Wednesday, February 16th, 2022 meeting of the Town North Andover Community Preservation Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by in-person and via remote means. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, hi, CJ. We will. No worries, no worries. We will post to the town website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in the public meeting, please email your questions or comments to prior to or during the meeting to dbeckley@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be provided to the committee before the meeting or read during the proceedings, if received during or shortly before the meeting. So with that, we'll make sure to move to executive session.
Motion move to executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6. I move to go into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property located at 400 Great Pond Road, North Andover, because discussion of this issue will have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town. The vote needs to be taken by roll call.
Do I have a second? Second. Second by Eric. All right. Bill?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
CJ?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. I declare that open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town. The committee will reconvene in open session following executive session. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We're moving back into open session now. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this public hearing will be conducted via in-person and via remote means. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this public hearing can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this public hearing, members of the public who wish to watch the public hearing may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the public hearing. If the public would like to participate in the public hearing, please email your questions or comments prior to or during the meeting to dbeckley@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be provided to the committee before the public hearing or read during the proceedings if received during or shortly before the public hearing. Thank you very much. All right, we'll continue our open session discussion regarding the town's application for the proposed acquisition of 400 Great Pond Road. So I guess we'll go into some additional questions, again, staying away from the topics discussed in executive session. Yep.
I was just curious, our use for it if we were to acquire it, can we lift the building? Can we move the building? Do we want to use the building at all? I mean, is there any use right now for the land other than to preserve it?
Obviously, the main would be to preserve the land and protect our watershed. The building, obviously, we don't want to get into the situation of like having to maintain a building that is, it's an old building and needs to be kept up. But I think that we can either go ahead of the historic commission and we could take it down, or we could figure out a way to maintain it with the water level rising, or we could get into a partnership. There was also an application in front of you guys for increased access to the lake, and that could be an option, I think, for us, that we could use it.
So so the town is a historic building and it's registered with the Mass Historic. And so it doesn't completely stop your ability to do renovations or construction or to move it. But what it does do is it has so many restrictions and regulations, and there's a lot of review process and delays that are built into that to make sure that whatever happens with this historic building is either preserved to the best sort of ability of the current owner under the current plans. And that's what we would have to look at when we were doing anything with that building. So if there was a plan to say, we're going to convert it, because right now it's a single-family home, used for a single-family home. If we said we're going to convert it to a boathouse to provide public access to the water and maybe find a partnership with somebody to do that with, then we'd have to have those plans reviewed and present them to Mass Historic. And it may be a longer process than your typical construction project, but it's something that could always be considered.
So at the moment, the town has absolutely no idea what you'll do with the building.
Well, I think that so there hasn't been this planning process, but one of the notions is to have it so that it's providing access to the water, and also looking for people to maybe enter into a partnership with to use the building as a boathouse.
So it's Stevens Estate Jr.?
With water views.
Is there a Mass Historic
Just
restriction on the deed?
It's not there's no restriction on the deed, but it is a registered.
So it's on the register?
Yes.
I think all that means is you can't use, I don't know, I might be wrong, but I think that just means you can't use public funds to tear it down. Unless there's something written into the deed. I don't know, I haven't seen it, so I don't know, but I think that may be the stipulation there.
Right, and you have to file with Mass Historic, and they have the review process, I believe. You have to get there's a letter you get from Mass Historic.
But there's no deed restriction
No
on the
deed
house.
restriction. Yes.
It seems to me that the primary reason, from listening to what everyone has said, is the primary reason for doing this is watershed supply maintenance and not watershed protection. And here's why there's a distinction, is that based on where the property is and the existing conservation restriction on the property, there can be no further building on the property beyond what it is today. So the lakefront is protected as it is today, because there's a conservation use and conservation restriction on the entire property. So after this is done, from that point of view, we're not going to be any different in terms of the protection of water supply. But the maintenance point is, it seems to all come back to the fact that we want the flexibility and capability to move up the water level a foot. If that's the primary reason, we should say that. And I'm not objecting to that. That may be a very valuable thing in the long run, but we ought to get that out on the table, and we need to buy the property in order to achieve that goal, I guess is my point.
So one of the primary reasons is to protect the water supply and to be able to increase that lake level, right? And that is within this application. But the conservation restriction on the property is at the Great Pond Road section of it. It's not at the lake level.
I know that, but the thing is, under zoning, there's a 250-foot limit on doing anything today. That already exists, and it's existed that way for,
Because it's in the watershed protection district.
It's in the watershed protection district, so you can't do anything within 250 feet of the lake. And then beyond that is the conservation restriction, and the conservation restriction cuts across the entire frontage of the property, so you can't even go in and provide additional access for something additional. So I guess my point is that the land is, I think, very well protected from further development and encroachment the way it is. And you wouldn't gain anything incrementally. Yeah, if you bought it, you would be able to use it. But the point is, do you want to spend that much money to have physical access to a property when you actually have a restriction on it today? Isn't that enough? That's the point. And if the real reason why we're doing it, and most of the money we're going to be spending on it is effectively buying the house so that we can maintain the water level. So that's, in the end, I mean, it may have merit, but it seems to me we have to have a clear idea of how we would maintain the water level, what we would do with the house before we make a decision on this.
I mean, my question, and it'll be very elementary, but if the town needs to raise the water level and it affects that house, how is it our problem? If the it already sits on the water, and if we have to raise the water level a foot, how, and it simply just affects the house, how is that our problem?
I don't know if we can flood out a private citizen.
Well, I don't know if there's any
don't believe we
riparian
can.
rights there.
Right, well, that's what I mean, like, is there
Is
something?
there any body
like,
of law related
I'm
to
looking at
that?
terms, like, I don't,
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, it's kind of elementary,
The house
but.
probably existed before it was a water source.
My understanding is that we're in some sort of agreement with the current owner that we won't do that, right? Like.
But is that a verbal agreement, a legal agreement, a written agreement,
So I guess I would say this in terms of what is.
I don't wanna do that to someone. I'm
Yeah,
just-
so we don't want to do that, and I guess what I would
But
say.
I wanna know specifics as to technically, how is that, we're looking to spend upwards of 1.8 million on another house. Why is but that lake has gone up and down, that house has been there how long? The basement is flooding because it was a boathouse and not a basement, and they changed it to a basement, and now it floods. I don't understand how it's, again, it's an elementary question, I don't know I don't wanna be, I don't wanna flood a house or someone who lives in it, I'm not looking to do that. I'm saying technically, how is it our problem?
So, I guess what you're really asking is, would the town have any liability if the lake
I
level
guess,
caused
yes,
damage
yes.
to the property?
Yes.
So, and I guess my response with that would be, that would be something that we would look at in terms of what the town's liability would be and whether or not we would have any exposure in that, but
So we don't know that yet.
Well, that would be a legal issue, and so we would want to look at that closely if that issue came up, and I don't know if this is necessarily the forum that we want to discuss the town's
No,
liability
But
with
there's
That's
a
not what
legal
I'm
issue,
asking
but
you,
there's
I'm
also,
just
I
asking.
think, an engineering issue of, is there a way
Right.
to avoid that problem. I have no idea. It may be structurally because of the way the building's set up, it can't, but I don't know. Has anybody
Right,
answered
that's
that
what I
question?
mean.
Because if the town bought it, they would have the same problem.
Exactly.
Well, that would
Yeah.
be my question. If the town wants to raise the water level, you're gonna further compromise the structure, most likely. Then you're gonna be in a situation where your building is potentially going to fall into the lake. So if the town does acquire it, how are they gonna deal with that issue? As Tracy said, are we into another Stevens estate?
Right.
We were maintaining a property, a piece of property that I guess effectively we really don't want to be there. And I guess my other question is, we mentioned the use of it as a boathouse. We have another application to restore the boat ramp. That's gonna encourage more use of the lake with obviously non-motorized boats, but aren't we trying to protect the lake by acquiring this property? And obviously, if we make it a boathouse, we're gonna obviously generate more boat use in the lake. So I guess I'm a little confused by that.
Right, so there's competing interests, right,
Right.
of having the public recreation on the lake and providing public access to the lake and protecting your public water supply at the same time. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, that's a competing interest, and that's something that would have to be balanced and planned for. That's definitely
I'm gonna want to
something.
say
And
why.
with, go ahead.
Has our harbor master weighed in on this?
He has not.
I
Not yet.
didn't talk to him about
I'm-
that.
yeah.
The the only thing I heard from him is an anecdote. He's driven by there and he's talked to the guy a few times.
I have to talk to the harbor master about this, of
Yeah.
course.
But I think it's worth asking him. I mean, we didn't have a
Absolutely.
technical discussion, but I think he has some real ideas about it. So, yeah.
Absolutely, I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot that we had a harbor master.
It's the most forgotten position in the town, I think.
Yeah.
It's an important role, though.
Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, I just think from a context perspective, this is not something that the town has gone looking for, right? Like, it's kind of fallen in, it's happened, like, just in the course of human events, that this property that has not been available is now available, and the choice is kind of foisted upon us. And I realize, like, it's, you know, it'd be nice to be able to say, like, let's study this for 2 or 3 years, but we only get one shot, and kind of the question is, like, if you miss, you know, what's the opportunity cost, right? Like, the opportunity cost is we don't get to raise the water level, you know, we don't get to decide what
We
happens
don't
on the
know
property.
that was my question. We actually don't know that. We don't wanna hurt a resident, but we don't know if we can raise it or not.
Yeah.
We
I
don't
mean, I
know.
think your point's well taken, that
I
it did
think
fall into
too.
a lap and we have to respond to it. But I think we're in the process of doing the due diligence.
Yeah.
And I think we could do it pretty
Yeah.
thoroughly, and it may be that that's the right thing to do. It may be that there's a different solution. We just don't know yet.
I have a question regarding the existing
Restriction held by the Greenbelt now currently, the conservation
The
restriction?
conservation
Yeah.
restriction.
So would that get extinguished? Would the town take benefit to that? Or would it be expanded across the rest of the property and then extended what would the Greenbelt's role be in any of this?
Well, I mean, I know, because I
Go
actually
ahead.
talked to the guy at Greenbelt, and I looked at the thing the other day. It would stay. It would stay with the land, it would just sit on top
Okay.
of it. The question would be, hypothetically, would the town extend it further
Right,
down?
that's what I'm asking, yeah.
You know, if they bought the whole property. In fact, I think we'd have to do that.
With Greenbelts?
Well, you could do it, they hold the CR, which
Yeah.
means they can come on and review it. Like every one of the properties we have a CR on, somebody maintains it. It's usually either Essex County Greenbelt or the trustees. Yeah. So, but I don't think anything would change. We would just expand on it, yeah.
Yep. So is there information that would be helpful for the committee to, when you're looking at this in more detail at your next meeting, that we can provide? I don't know if what your process is gonna be, but do you want some additional information that we can provide that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're planning to vote March 10th
Okay.
at our next meeting, so since we wanted to have this early, so we give folks time to respond to some of these additional questions.
Absolutely.
And provide some additional materials.
Mhm.
So, you know, I guess from what I've heard tonight, you know, one, I would like to hear Mr. Boynton's opinions on this. I'd like to, you know, probably address some of Tracy's questions of the what if, right? Of,
Yeah.
you know, what are the, you know, the liability, the ramifications of allowing the water to raise now? Is there an existing document that governs that? between the property owner and the town now.
I'd be curious too, and you may know right off the top of your head too, but was the house built before the lake was given to the town? Or was the house built after the lake was given to the town as our water supply?
I don't.
And I wonder if that would play into liability at all.
I don't know the answer to that question. You can find out. Yeah,
We'll figure
right.
it out, I'm sure.
Well, that's the question. Is there even a written instrument that
I'll
governs it
Google it.
right now, I guess is the biggest
Right.
question, right? So, and I
And so
think-
we can also provide information maybe from the DPW that will discuss the
Terry actually
public
just said it was
works
built after.
When I saw it on the sale, I saw that when the house was built, it was built after, like,
Right.
wasn't built before.
That might
Oh,
limit our
ah.
liability.
It might.
I mean, I don't wanna hurt them, I know that
No,
I'm probably
right.
coming across
Right.
like I wanna flood out
Right,
the house, I
right.
don't.
And I'm only hesitating because I hate to discuss
Yeah,
town
I
liability
don't
in
wanna
open
do
session.
that.
Well, right.
Right. So,
And again, who
Like to
knows?
go through an analysis of the town's liability over the water level in an open session, I would rather not do.
No,
that,
no,
just
no,
because
no,
if-
that's
Because
not-
if
no, I'm
anything does
just-
happen, then
I'm just curious.
we've just created our record.
You do, yeah,
I
exactly.
wonder if you
Yeah.
think so.
Right. Okay, so I think that's everything that we would have on this.
Perfect,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you both. Okay. I want to thank the rest of you for your patience as we kind of went through that in executive session. I think next on our agenda is the North Andover Housing Authority and Affordable Housing Trust. We have Lori Burzlaff here with us, and I think Maggie Clary is on the Google Meet to discuss their application. Sorry, let me pull it up. I had it here just a second ago. Their application before us in the amount of $100,000 for, I think, design, study feasibility at Fountain Drive. So, Lori, I don't know if you want to make any opening statements on it, or if you want us to get into questions.
Well, it's up to you. Do you want me to?
Yeah, you don't have to go
Explain
through the whole
briefly
application.
for-
Yeah, maybe
okay.
a high level overview would be great. Thank you.
So the Affordable Housing Trust is partnering with the North Andover Housing Authority to try to build 12 additional one-bedroom units at Fountain Drive for buildings that are similar to what's currently there. Current standards require the units to be a little bigger than the ones that are currently there, but the buildings themselves aren't going to be, 3 stories high or anything like that. We had a feasibility study done. They did give 3 options. This was the best one in the Housing Authority's opinion. Like I said, the other 2 didn't conform with the neighborhood. One was a townhouse style with garages underneath, and the other was a big, taller building. This request is for the design phase of the project. The trust is committed the $100,000, and we also just voted yesterday to commit up to $50,000 to pay for consultants. There's going to be a need for somebody who can help navigate the process to look for tax credits and grants and funding for the project, additional funding besides what we will probably come back next year, if this all goes the way we hope, for some assistance in helping construct the property, and consultants for land use and technical reviews. So we've already agreed to pay for all that in addition to our contribution to the design, we being the Affordable Housing Trust.
All right, Maggie, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, and I'll go around the committee with questions if you don't.
I'm all set. Laurie gave a very thorough summary.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Maggie. All right. All right, if we could, I'd like to kind of work around and see who has what questions for Laurie and for Maggie. Bill?
My question is going back to the capital study that we did a few years ago, that this committee funded to look at capital needs, and I looked at the section on Fountain Drive, and they said the existing units are kind of, at near end of life. So I'm not, I think it's great, we'd be adding more housing, but just how does that work if you're sort of, you have one development with brand new and sort of end of life, and would there be like a phase 2 of renovating those, or?
So that would actually be a question for Maggie, but I will say that we paid for this feasibility study to be done, and this is what they have recommended. But Maggie can address the buildings.
I was quite surprised when I read that, and I thought it was a rather harsh description, and I feel that the residents who are living there right now would agree that the units are not at the end of their useful life. I know that DHCD is committed to capital funds to keep maintaining and improving the units. We have a new roof going on a building right now. We also have a project previously funded by the CPC that was split last year with new roofs at Olds Terrace and renovating the cement steps and front porches. It's consistently probably one of the most popular places to live out of the 6 senior complexes we have. I personally don't think it's at the end of its useful life. I disagree with the feasibility study and that method. I do think, as Laurie mentioned, they did also say that the land there sitting empty, could certainly be better utilized.
I think it's important too, Bill, just to understand that the current Fountain Drive, which is a 236 property under state, will continue to be its own entity per se. So it will continue to get annual formula funds. It's in the capital plan. Maggie may come back for more here. So it's not a property that is end of life and just gonna wither away and nothing's gonna happen to it. It's always gonna stay in the portfolio, and it'll continue to annually get those formula funds from the state for capital. The only place to add units for the housing authority is really that land. So you kind of have to look at it as 2 separate entities, even though, because they will be too. The new units will have nothing to do with the Fountain Drive property, in the sense of that 2 different programs, 2 different. You can have 2 buildings right next to each other, and while it seems like it's the same property, they're not. They can be 2 different programs, and so it's looking at. I totally understand where you're coming from and what you're saying, because it feels like it's just an addition to the current property, but it'll actually be viewed as a completely different project in perpetuity.
So to Bill's point, which I think was a good point.
Yeah, it
is. If I lived in Fountain Drive and they have this beautiful shiny new place next to me, now I want some of that, So I think I think there needs to be some type of phase 2 to bring that property a little more current when we do that. I would be in favor of doing that. I know that because I just, even though they're separate, they're just so close that I can see. And I've been in the units. They're okay, but they definitely could be updated. So.
I guess my question would be, how does that impact our project? Like, are you gonna?
That's right.
I would imagine that it wouldn't be contingent on the rest of the units being.
Sounds like we're not against your project.
No, I know. I want to make sure that there's not a contingency that we're going to move forward and start doing phases for all the other 6 buildings or whatever they are.
I think, we just, I know when people come and ask for stuff and we try to say, like, let's get a plan so we're not, because we've heard from residents, like, why'd you do this and not that? And the capital plan kind of said, we're going to do this. Like, here's our roadmap for how we get these properties, funded, and people come year after year and say, like, okay, next priority is this, and that's really logical.
I think the housing authority will continue to follow that capital plan. That capital plan's not going to go anywhere. This is in addition to.
Right.
This is just in addition to, and I think definitely with input from this particular committee. I know that Maggie, as well as the board, if you're looking to go outside of that capital plan and take the monies that Maggie would be asking for other things and put it all in, that's something that can be discussed as well. Yeah. But I mean, this is in addition to and adding units.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% in agreement.
No,
I think it's just the way we've been operating in terms of the messaging. That would come out is to say, like, okay, we're doing this that's new, and we're going to continue on the capital plan,
right.
So that everyone.
And it's optics. I get that. Yeah.
Sort of a segue into the question I have. Not familiar at all with how these buildings are built. What is roughly the roadmap for $3.5 million? I mean, $100,000 study, and then what's the next step after that, Lori? I mean, let's say it goes forward, you got a plan. Where does the money come from? The state?
Well, it's a combination, and that's one of the reasons why we agreed to hire a consultant, because one of the main purposes of that person is going to be to find tax credits, grants, and things like that. Some of it, Maggie can answer the question as far as what gets funded through the state. I don't know if there's anything.
I don't think that the state is going to subsidize
Yeah.
these in any
So
way, shape, or form.
it'll be a combination, which is, again, we're at the very beginning stages of the process. Once we get the consultant on board, they'll be able to direct us. There's private entities,
There's HUD too. There's a possibility of going the HUD route.
Right.
You're not going to get anything from DHCD, but we have discussed with the board and with Maggie and with Lori that there is a possibility of HUD money. More than likely tax credit money, more than likely private funding along those ways, but it could end up a project-based with HUD funds. So each unit is subsidized, not.
I don't even know if it's applicable here for this committee, but would you be coming back for more money to help? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, to follow on to that question, if, again, I understand you're only in a process, so you don't know, but is notionally something around $3.5 million for 12 units in the ballpark of what we're talking about here? I mean, I'm just trying to get an understanding. So I guess my question would be, what's the risk that basically all those other sources dry up? And if we did this, we would have to finance the entire thing ourselves through CPA.
So we hope that wouldn't happen. The trust has discussed, we basically earmarked about $500,000 for this project. Some would come from there. Rob Bernardin, who's on the Affordable Housing Trust, is very well versed in how to fund these things, and he's actually going to be taking the lead and working with Maggie on it. So, I mean, I could get you more information from him as far as what his thoughts are on the chances of us not getting anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, I understand it's early in the game and you don't know,
Right.
and I wouldn't expect, but I'm just trying to get kind of like an order of magnitude thing
Yeah.
of the relative risk. Because I mean, Tracy, you know this business really well, but I remember when we did the Stevens Corner project, I was shocked at how many pots there were and how complex it was. It was mind-boggling.
It's very
So,
complex,
yeah.
and
Which is why
I'm not
they're
going to
ponying
pretend
it.
that
Yeah.
I understand any of
Yeah.
it, which is why Rob is taking the lead on it.
And then they're also going to pay for a private consultant to seek out
Yeah,
those funds
we-
because,
Yeah.
the complexities of it and the layers.
Yeah.
This could become a layered funding. I mean, it could end up in a nonprofit's hand under the umbrella of the housing.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways that this could go, but without the initial design and schematic design and all, it goes nowhere.
Right. Yeah.
It's too complicated, truly,
It's-
to build
it's-
affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yes. They don't make it easy. I mean, there's also the possibility that we'd ask, at some point, I've thought about it, about borrowing.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I
you
mean,
can borrow.
Wouldn't you borrow a small amount based on the rental flow? I mean, it would generate a certain amount of cash flow, and it wouldn't be very big, but it would be a piece of it, I
Right.
would think. You'd take a mortgage on the property.
Right.
Yeah.
But we'll leave that to the experts.
Yeah.
My questions were answered almost.
Tracy, I'm assuming you good?
I'm good.
Terry?
No, I think it's, when we can add more, it's a great thing.
CJ?
All set. I guess my only question, Lori, Maggie, is do we have an estimate on the design from the consultant already? And we're asking for $100,000. Do we have a cost estimate on that? I didn't see one in the application.
I don't think we did. Did
Okay.
we, Maggie? We used
An
our best
estimate?
guess on that.
For the design contract?
Yeah, for the design contract, yeah.
No, that was provided, the 100,000 was provided by the consultant that the Affordable Housing Trust paid for, EBI Consulting.
Okay.
And they are the ones who did the initial feasibility study for the property.
Okay. Would it be possible to get just kind of a written quote from them, or is there something we can back up in the application for? Is that reasonable?
Sure, we should probably be able to get a written quote.
Just something we can just have in the file, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. If there's no other questions from the committee? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. All right, next on our agenda is the proposal for the Lake Chickwit boat ramp renovation. Mr. Kelly? Thank you for coming back. So we had a lengthy discussion, back in, I guess it was in our December meeting, kind of about your, prior to your application, and I think first, thank you for the work you put in to this. I think that's great. It's not every year we get applications from citizens, certainly with this level of detail. So thank you for that. But I know the committee, I think, does have a number of questions that have come up in our initial review of it, and if you don't mind, we'll kind of go through that.
Sure.
All right. Bill, want to start with you?
No, I'm good.
You're good on this one? Okay. Tim?
I think there's probably better people in this room that can ask the question relative to the actual ramp and the reason and use. But I'll ask the question. What is the purpose of a boat ramp that you had in mind to put in the water?
Yeah, so I think maybe this is a semantic question. If I maybe have said it was a boat launch, it might have been better received by everyone, but the idea is just to be able to get a boat in the water. And that's really what we'd like to do here. The existing one is in such poor condition, it's really a hazard. I mean, you try to back down that carrying a 250-pound boat, and you're going to probably break something. So, and it's not just a boat. So I think if we were to kind of characterize this as a boat launch instead of a ramp, it's just really a way to get access to the lake for people who have permits, abiding by all the restrictions that are there, that would make this recreational space more usable again. Because it's right now, it's kind of in such a state of disrepair, it's basically unusable.
Yeah, is it more of a step one, make it a safe environment for putting boats in the water? Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we'd like to make it easy so people can, carry their boat and put it in the water and use the lake. And right now, it's just, again, it's kind of dangerous. And it's starting to just, if you look through the application, you saw the pictures of this, it's really starting to break down pretty badly.
That was a good presentation.
And so, it's, I think, a good use of, funds that we have available to do something about it. And we were lucky enough to work with EV Partners to help kind of formulate a plan to go through a design study and do all the permitting, because it's pretty complicated. There's like 8 different steps to permit it. And we want to do all the right things, and we just wanted to, get this in front of people to start, thinking about it, talking about it. So.
Okay, I'm good.
John?
I was not there the last time, but I did watch the video, and I do want to thank you for your initiative in doing this. I think it's great. I think that basic idea here of taking a facility that's not in good shape and making it better is a good. When in our last meeting, when we talked a little bit about, I had raised some questions. I asked if you had talked to the harbor master. I don't know if you heard the jokes about it before, but Peter Boynton is the harbor master. He's very diligent about it, and I did talk to him at some length, and I think it might be a good idea for you to talk to him if you haven't. And he's a great guy, so he wouldn't mind. But at one level, his concern was, first of all, no trailers, and I know in your application you talked about, adhering to the size limit and adhering to the fact that there were no gas engine things, which is great. But it was unclear if you were contemplating trailers.
Well, to the extent that you can use a trailer to get a boat into that location. You know,
But it's against the rules to do it because of the.
no, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
to bring a boat to the north pump to the station location,
To the parking lot?
to the parking lot, and not back it down the ramp, right? I think that's been the rub. I'm not proposing we change any of the rules around the restrictions on the lake.
No, but the point ends up being is there's two threads to it from talking to Peter. Is one that if people are allowed to bring a trailer vehicle in, put it in the water, then take it out, put it back in the trailer and go out. That's not actually allowed under the rules because of invasive species. So I think
And we understand that,
yeah,
and we're not.
and I think it would be fine
We're not
with
advocating
So
that.
that would be probably the one big concern that he would have on that.
For sure,
So,
and we kind of brainstormed a little bit. I mean, there's ways we can restrict that, right? We can put bollards up, we can put steps. I mean, however the town would like to see it implemented so we can prevent that. You know, we're all ears. We want to hear how to do it. But
yeah, okay. The other question I have is, I think you addressed, and I think rightfully so, both the ramp and the bulkhead. And I think sort of intuitively it's, let's get the ramp done as quickly as can and then do the bulkhead on a separate thing. You could do them separately. I think that makes sense. I guess I'm going to introduce a larger context here, is that on that side of the lake, there's a really big erosion problem today, all the way up. I mean, the road's been closed off for a long time because of the fact that the town didn't properly maintain it for many years when they knew they should have, and now they're actually fixing it. So I think anything we do there should be in context of that whole project, because we want to do the parts of that side of the lake that are worse first before we do the parts that are. And so I don't know, again, if you've talked to DPW about it, you know, and about how they think about it.
Well, John Borghese is kind of a co-sponsor of this CPC request and helped formulate the thinking and drafting of it. And he certainly has talked about the work that's being done further down the road, in specifically what's being done right now. He didn't really educate us on, if there's a larger plan and larger scopes of work, and incorporating this into it would be news to me. So I'd like to hear if that's something that we need to do.
Yeah, I think it might be useful to look at a larger context. The other thing is that, this is my personal opinion, and I think some members of this committee might disagree with me on this, but I think the proposed amount of money for the study is really high. And I mean, and maybe, Terry, you'd appreciate this. If this was back in the Buddy Sear days, the ramp would be done in a week and probably cost us $10,000, and we'd have something that works. And I'm not advocating that, but $150,000 to do studies.
Well, it's permitting too, and that's the big lump
Yeah,
here.
but what permitting got done is part of this whole road problem. They never went to the planning board and got a special permit. They never went to the Conservation Commission and got a special permit.
I believe that's because it was an emergency. That's how John.
Well, yeah, it was an emergency because they didn't do anything for 8 years and they knew
Well,
they had a problem.
it also allows you to bypass the permitting stage if it's
Well,
declared an emergency.
but even beyond that, I don't buy that completely. I mean, my point is, I think this proposal you got from the engineering firm is way over-engineered. I mean, I don't think you need to spend nearly
What
that
makes you
much
say that?
money.
Yeah.
That just feels to me to be.
It just feels bad?
It feels really high.
But under
I'm
what?
looking at the breakdown though.
Yeah, I mean, under
It's
what
100,
context?
but some of the stuff they're doing doesn't necessarily need to be done if all you want to do is build a boat ramp.
Well, wait a minute.
But you
it's
have
the
the
bulkhead,
concept
too.
design, you have the field investigations that have to be done all under what's gonna be required from the town. The design documents, schematics.
I just don't think you need all that stuff.
Well,
but, you
I'd be thrilled
Just to
if
go
it
down
was a
there
lot
and fix
easier and go and do it in a week and for 10 grand.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just think somebody should understand what the legal requirements are first before you assume,
But that's
I
what all
mean,
this
that
is
we're gonna
for.
hire all these consultants. I mean, I looked at
Fine.
some of this stuff that the consultants are doing, and you could do it a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and do it in a very professional manner for far less money.
I would do the easiest path forward. It was my understanding, talking to people in the town, at planning and conservation, that this was the path to take. I work in construction, I looked at
And
that.
that's, and that's fair.
Yeah,
And,
I work
mean,
in
yeah.
construction, I looked at that estimate, and it looked fine to me, from the
Yeah.
standpoint of the amount of work they have to do, and the amount of documentation they have to do, and the
I
amount of
just question
oversight.
whether it's all needed.
If it was a private lake, we could do it in a week for 10 grand, but it's the town water supply, so we have to take all these precautions,
Yeah.
right? I
John,
mean,
I would also like to add that the engineering consultant is the one who has been working on Great Pond Road and were recommended because they were familiar with the area and would be taking into consideration the precautions that weren't taken with Great Pond Road. So they are familiar with the area. I'm not as knowledgeable about quotes, so I can't quite speak to that. But we didn't. It's not just some throwaway number.
What's your rough estimate, assuming this goes forward, and then you go to the phase 2 part of actual construction? I'm sure it's in the document somewhere. What's your rough?
it's not in the document, and I pushed environmental partners, I said, give me a number. I can't go into this meeting without, what's phase 2 gonna be?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do it. I kind of admire them for that, because that happens to me all the time. I go to look at work and they say, what's it gonna cost? And if I give them a number, it's always wrong, right? So you really wanna do your diligence, write it all up, and say, here's what it's gonna cost. And that's really what they've tasked to do. I'm guessing if you do that whole retaining wall, you're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. If you're gonna do the ramp, you could probably do it for 30 to 50, depending on what you're using for materials.
Yeah, you could use precast planks.
Yeah, and so, you're probably in those two realms. I mean, that's why we could probably get the ramp done pretty affordably, but
So-
to take that retaining wall apart and rebuild it,
So you're basically saying it's somewhere between here.
well, again, I'd say the boat ramp, we could probably say you're between 50 and 70, Rick. I mean, you tell me if that feels
Yeah,
right to you.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, but that retaining wall, it really depends what they want to do. If they're gonna take the whole wall apart and pour a whole new one in, whether it's poured concrete or precast or block or
Maybe
whatever,
prevailing wage. Yep.
or are they just gonna go in and repair it? Like, I'm just gonna go in there with a mason and just try to put the blocks in place and put it back? I mean,
Yeah.
there's different ways to approach that, but a lot of it's gonna be guided by what the town's gonna
Yeah.
require for the permit.
Well, I think part of, I know the 150 is kind of throwing you, John, but the due diligence of these 5 tasks are absolutely needed, and I think you were probably guided by those who work in the town. But the biggest issue too is that you have to do all this. This is gonna go to a public bid.
Oh, no, I know it goes, well, I just question whether the
So it's gonna be
scope
more
of the
than
work is
50K.
all required to achieve the end. I mean, you're
I
right,
think so.
if you're gonna do all those things, it's probably gonna cost that much, but I guess I come to the point where, having been on this committee for a long time, we've done a lot of studies, I see a fair amount of scope creep in some of the engineering work on these things.
Oh, I
just over
don't
time,
think that
and
anybody
I
would
think
disagree with that,
I'm
but
trying
it
to
is-
figure
it
out
is.
how we can, what's the minimum amount of, we have to do to protect the interest of the town and comply with all the rules, and this just feels a little high. That's my
Well,
only
I
point.
guess my question maybe to build on that a little bit, John, is if we were to break this out and say, okay, well, if we tackle task 1 and task 2, does that make us smart enough to maybe get better as to understanding what the actual construction cost may cost on this?
You still have
You gotta
to
get
do
to-
a lot of the upfront work.
You still?
Yeah, I mean, I could.
You gotta do your design work. You've gotta go through design.
Yeah.
You might, if you're gonna permit one, you might as well permit both of them.
Right.
Well, I'm saying
You can do you can
research.
do the first 3 things here.
Okay.
Through design, and you can
Okay.
say, I'm not gonna do the permitting, right? You
Fair.
can say, all right, let's get a set of design documents, and then you could at least probably send that out to bid,
Yeah.
right? And then you could get at least a sense of what that's gonna be, and then you could take on the permitting maybe after you've got the cost. But they've got a final bid document in there as a way to prepare, I think, real construction drawings.
Sure.
Not just schematics, so.
Right.
Sure.
You know, I mean,
Because you're gonna have to have your 100% construction docs before you can go to public bid. So it's skipping 4 and 5, it's not gonna happen when you go to a public.
Well, you can probably get pricing at that level, right? I can get pricing at schematics, but I can't get
But you can't get the bid.
I can't get a contract price.
you're gonna get the permitting.
Yeah.
Right, and then your permitting is either gonna go to the, right.
And so, based on, the timeline of doing this, it's like, it's gonna be a year.
Yeah.
Do we really wanna break it up into 3 years, or 4, or 5?
Well, but I think that there's also, as we talked about our last meeting, if we fund the initial part, there's an implied commitment on our end to fund the construction, right? And if we do, I think that there is, again, we're not obligated, but there is some implication that, yeah, we're in support of the project and we're otherwise not wasting $150,000, but you don't want us to throw good money after bad. If this comes back and it's $1 million project, do we want $1 million boat ramp when the harbor master wants to limit access to the lake a little bit? So,
but that's what we were asking them to, like, when they prepare these documents, to have it broken out in pieces, right? I've got a scope that's just a ramp. I've got a scope that's just a wall.
Okay.
I would also just look at some general site improvements there. Peter talked about moving the boat ramps closer. I mean,
is that broken out that way between just the ramp and just the wall? Did I miss that?
Well,
in there,
when we would ask the engineers to do their documentation, they would have limited scopes of work, drawn on the plan. It says scope A, scope B, so they could look at in pieces.
Sure.
There might be obviously some tie-in where they connect. That you got to do one maybe amended, but
okay.
I mean, the idea would be to do it so you could build it and then do the second piece. And if it made sense to do it all at once, we can, but
you could put it out to bid with your alternates too, you know what I mean? And then those could come back in, and you never know, they could come back in and.
Well, right, of course.
And you're shocked, and you can
From a
actually do
construction
it all.
stand, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But exactly. So I mean, it could be a very expensive project if you were to reveal the whole thing. And that's where selfishly, I just like to see
go boating. Yeah. I get it.
I
get it. Yeah. I get it. I get it.
Be a bunch of guys you go in the middle of the night, put it in and be done.
John, you're right. You could probably just go patch that with some asphalt too, and we'd be done. But it's
okay.
But it's the lake. So
I want to make sure everyone has a chance to ask a question.
One question I had, Ted, was the width of the boat ramp. Obviously, with the trailer restriction backing into the lake, you really only need walking access. So that boat ramp could be diminished in width.
yeah, I mean, if the restriction is 15 feet, right? It's a 15-foot restriction on the boat. I think you need at least 15 feet because we don't want anybody backing into the lake. So you got to turn that boat sideways to put it in, right? So whether you start narrow and go wide or you just keep it at 15 feet.
Well, you probably would have to put some sort of gate or bollards there because otherwise, if it's 15 feet wide and there's no restrictions, people are going to back their trailers in because then you're also putting an enforcement
but then we
obligation on the town to prevent the
so
trailers from
we put the
backing.
bollards in place, or we put steps. You put steps that are big enough that you would wreck a trailer trying to back it down there.
Yeah, I'm just saying this in terms of design.
One of the concerns that Peter has, and this is why I think it's a good idea to talk to him, is that if you create a nice amenity, your requirements for maintaining it only for people from North Andover and according to the rules is going to go up. I mean, and he realizes that's not a reason not to do it. You should do it anyway, but that, in fact, you have to deal with that circumstance.
Yeah, and I think, we, as part of this, we get some good signage. We get the 7 pages of restrictions and put them in there and maybe condense it to 1 page that we could post there that says you got to be a town resident, no gas, no trailer down the ramp. They can't get the trailer down the ramp. We can restrict that so it doesn't happen, right? And so we can solve all those problems. Those are easy problems to solve, in my opinion.
And just for the committee, if anyone didn't know, Peter did issue us a written statement, which is in the meeting packet, so I encourage you to take a chance to review that.
Yeah.
This committee is big on signage, so, I think.
We'll get some nice signs.
should get covered.
Yeah, I think you could do, as part of the CPC signage, we would have the lake use rules right there, and then in terms of enforcement, how's it enforced now? It's what, the community enforces it, right? We don't have police people down there checking things, but.
Such a lousy boat ramp right now.
Yeah, I understand, if we make it really nice, you have all these people in here trying to use it, but I think we just have to, as a community.
We only give out X amount of permits
Right.
each year. There's only X amount of permits given out. And it would be up to the harbor master to make sure that the boats on the lake have a permit.
No, I think,
We'll have to get him a boat.
Yeah. I mean, you
And
mean
he
the-
can put it in at the nice full launch.
No trailer, no trailer.
No, I mean, a lot of the users do self-police this. I mean,
Oh,
the,
for
pe-
sure
the
they
people who
do. They
like,
absolutely
who
do.
love the
Everybody
lake and who
who
want to
use
use
the lake
this
know who uses the
are
lake.
gonna get people who aren't supposed to be there out of there, right?
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, that's my hope anyway,
Yeah. I
that it would
love
be self-policed.
You good? I'm good. Tracy, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm good. The only question I'd have is, I mean, I'm all in favor of the boat ramp and going to the wall, whether or not that's something, I'd like to hear, if we don't do the wall, what's gonna happen? Is that land gonna start eroding like the road, or what's going on? So, I mean, but we'll do the study and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets folded into a bigger project too, I'd love that to happen, to say, hey, you know, is 133, is it a state road or is it a town road? The state road, right? So will the state give us some of this infrastructure money to help with some of this stuff, right? I mean,
It could explode. Become a whole big, huge project.
no, but if it could fold into that,
Yeah.
then you'd say, okay, that retaining wall is gonna be part of the road improvement state
Right.
project, and we can just do the boat ramp.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so, well, just in terms of cost, I mean, we did not put this out to bid, right? We went to an engineer who was already engaged with the town, who came recommended from the town agencies, the planning in
No,
DPW.
that's fine. I mean, I think you did the right due diligence. I just got a little sticker shock on it, that's all.
Yeah, I did too when I saw it, but then when I broke it down, I'm like, yeah, it made sense, you know?
Yeah, no kidding.
Don't come cheap.
Worth every nickel. Mr. Kelly, thank you again.
You're welcome.
It's a
For your
fun
efforts and your
meeting
time.
tonight,
I
Tevin.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we just can't get away from the waterfront. Wire Hill Waterfront Fencing Project. Gene, you speaking? to that?
Hello,
How are you?
good, thank you.
Good.
So I'm with Jeremy Dick from the Trustees of Reservations.
Jeremy, how are you?
They are supporting my application. Essentially, the objective is to keep people on delineated trails in the watershed and Wire Hill, and to stop kind of the drifting off from the trail towards the watershed, the lake shore. So there's approximately 800 feet of fencing proposed, only 100 of which is on trustees' land, so the vast majority is on town land. I know there was some previous questions about a section that we're trying to eliminate, and that it's a very small section, but what it is people cutting from where the kayak storage area is up until to the existing trail, and it's really proximate to the shoreline, and there's erosion going on. We're just proposing to put some plantings there to try to dissuade people from this alternative kind of cut through and keep them on the main trail that is more than sufficient to handle the traffic that's in the trail network. There's existing split rail from the area we're bringing this through, kind of running along the shoreline all the way to what we call Pebble Beach and beyond. And so we're really just trying to tie that in. That's been really effective to keep people out of some of the shoreline plantings and improve the habitat of that area.
Okay. I guess we'll go around and go through questions.
Do you have anything
Unless
to add
Mr.
to
Dick
that,
has
or-
anything you'd like to add?
No, I would just second the success of the existing post and rail fence between this area and the beach section, and how we actually obscured trail at the shoreline during that project and recovered that land, revegetated that area to improve the shoreline. So.
And I'll just add, in the packet, we have longer-term aspirations to kind of reroute some of the trails that are along the shoreline a little bit higher up, but it'll be a phased project that we hope over the next few years will, there's some fencing that we just want to repurpose, and there's some trail network we just want to move up. It's almost an existing trail, but there's two paths you can take. The easier one is closer to the shoreline, and so there's opportunity to just move it a little further away.
All right.
I'm good.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm good too.
John, you're good? Okay. Well, these are easy. Rick? Tracy?
I'm good.
Terry?
Thank you.
I'm the only one asking questions? I had you guys come all the way out here. You're too easy.
No engineered plans, no.
All right, I'll ask some questions, because I don't make you guys come here for nothing.
The Celtics are on. I'm only kidding.
I guess you mentioned that the existing fences have been pretty effective at keeping people away. How are they keeping pets away? And how is that? Because I think that's a big problem with people bathing in the lake. We have a bigger issue with pets. There actually noticed a dog in one of the pictures staying at the water. So, because it'll be the same kind of post and rail, which animals can get through, or
It's just a mindset for people, I think.
Okay.
I think people.
It's more people than pets, right?
Right,
Is it? Okay.
and people own the pets, and so they see this delineation, and most of which I think respect it. Unfortunately, there's a population that don't. There's also those steps, there's granite steps that lead down where we're bringing this fence to. The longer term is actually going to put like a turnstile there that is not so inviting, and we hope that's a real primary access where people come down from the middle of Wire Hill, and it's like right there, and it's just a continuation from that trail. And so that's part of the longer term to solve that problem.
And this isn't tied into the Gateway project, really, that we funded last year?
It's not completely tied, but it's certainly an extension of that.
Okay. Kind of picks up right where that one left off. It's pretty close,
right?
right?
There. Yep.
Okay.
I'll add just additional signage as well. So this fence will allow us to install some additional signage that suggests that people don't cross this barrier and keep the lake healthy with dogs, with themselves, by staying out. So.
I think I did comment on it last year. One of the things I found most remarkable with the presentation for that project was how much improving the quality of the entrance actually improves people's behavior. So I assume this is an extension of that mindset.
Yeah.
Okay. And my last question, I guess we're getting into kind of the future, but since it's in the application, we'll address it. As you're moving trails further and further away from the water, is that reducing water views or the attractiveness of folks getting there? I just know candidly people love to have the ability to kind of get as close down and watch it and watch the water. Are we taking away some of that by moving further up?
That's something we'll need to balance, especially in that the suggested northern piece from the beach up to Edgewood, where moving the trail inward puts more trees between you and the water. Yes, so maybe using we're doing some of that. The beach section, perhaps one of the ideas we were thinking of is leaving that approach as kind of a scenic vista where people could still walk out to it, but then the trail itself, it would be like a triangle. So the proper trail would lead you this way. You could take a trail in and back to that vista, but still restrict the sand access. Have a upland area where you could stand and look at the water. And then further north, where there's a longer bog bridge section, having views through those trees, maybe some selective removal of the trees to keep things open in the future years is something we could look at as well. So I think we'll find a good balance. We just have to investigate where the trail would actually go. And one of the main factors for that northern section in moving the trail beyond the shoreline protection is to get people out of the mud. Because right now it's a very muddy stretch and people just pound the soil to a pulp and the roots are exposed. So getting them further out of that.
Have any studies, or have you guys looked at anything that would determine kind of where the shoreline moves if the water would rise, say, I don't know, a foot?
No. No.
That's a good point too, because the trail at the beach, that elevation, it would be underwater. So,
okay.
Yeah. It would.
The trail now,
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yep. Broken clock's right twice a day, so. Okay, I just, obviously, for obvious reasons, that may tie into other discussions, so.
That's a really good question.
And that'd be good. It'd be great once we have that data. We would love to use that to look at the shoreline and where things, where the planning side of that. So yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. That's it. That's all I had.
All right.
So, all right.
We're good.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for being patient. Okay, moving along. Yeah. Mazzarenko Farm, trail improvements.
Yes. Hello.
How are you?
Great, thanks. How about you?
Good, good.
I'm Mike. I'm Steve from Phonet, Townsend on Andover Trails.
Thank you for coming. And you got your cheering section too, I think Steve
Yes.
and Stan are here, right? Excellent. Now, you could maybe give us a kind of a quick overview and we'll go through some questions if you don't mind.
Sure. So the Locust and Scout Trail are severely eroded and very, very muddy. We had very, very wet summer. These trails tend to stay wet, but then dry out a little bit towards the end of summer. This year it never happened, and they've just been, I guess, what was it, beaten to a pulp or whatever the previous guy said, similar.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we would just like to build upwards of 800 feet of bog bridging on them just to get people up out of the mud and prevent further erosion.
Okay.
We already have a section that we've already built earlier on Locust Trail between the parking lot from Mazzarenko over the stream, and then off the end of that, just continue basically.
Okay. Bill, any questions for you?
I'm good now. Looks good. Well prepared.
Tim?
I would agree, just, I have to ask the question, Conservation Commission involvement in this project at all?
Oh, we'll go through for the standard NDA.
You guys are pros with this stuff, so,
Yep.
okay.
We do it every time. So.
John?
I'm good.
Questions?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Tracy? Terry? CJ? All right, I'll be the skunk at the picnic again, okay. I noticed in the picture, are there, other than the ones you just constructed, were there previous boardwalks on this? Because I thought maybe I saw some boards in one of the pictures, or is that more?
Real
hoc.
boardwalks? No. Steve, are you aware of?
There was an old boardwalk where we built the bridge over the stream that crosses Bradford Street, which you see in the picture that we had.
Okay, I see some boards up in the very last picture in the application, so I wasn't sure.
Someone's attempt to try to stabilize the trail in a muddy area.
Okay,
And we've seen it before where they start putting logs and plywood and planks, very haphazard. We're trying to improve upon that situation, make it more of a permanent, safer route.
got it, okay. What's the rough useful life of some of these boardwalks? Did you have any experience, you guys know how long they last and how often you're replacing them?
No hard data. Most of what we do, most of what we're proposing is pressure treat sleepers, and then we'll use a rough cut hemlock.
25
on
years?
top. So,
Okay.
say it again.
25 years, PT.
The PT, yes. We use a rough cut hemlock on top, 2x10s, and those will last. I mean, we've had to replace a couple boards here after 5 years, but mostly they're lasting upwards of 10 to 15. So.
I guess my last question, you referenced in the application that, it's, the impact on the town's water supply. Is this just because it's within the watershed, or this may be my own ignorance of it?
It is. It's actually, especially on the one end, it's getting very close to Ray's Pond there, which is right there.
Okay, right, so folks walking through the mud and everything else, if you keep them elevated out of it, that helps out. Again, I'm asking out of my own ignorance of how it helps. Is there damage being done to the water supply currently?
So our take on that would be yes. So again, as you get increasing erosion, you're getting more runoff.
Yeah.
That's taking the salt into the pond.
Got it.
So
Okay.
So you had handiwork on the Sear trails?
yes.
So I did hike those before. Mud pictures you have in your presentation today, very much the same. And today, a world of difference. So
Yep. No,
nice.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for funding that one as well. That was great.
Okay. I don't think we have any other questions on this project. Are you in position to speak a little bit about the Usler property with regards to the two bridges?
I just found out about that one today, but sure, we can talk about that. I think it's similar.
Okay, yeah, so just for two bridges, correct? I guess I won't badger you with questions if you're not totally up to speed on that one.
Glenn Aspesley, our president, did most of the work on that one, but we did talk about that today. during the
Okay,
meeting.
okay. Well, we won't put you on the spot then, unless anyone has any specific questions they want to address right now on that one, because Mr. Nugent's, is Steve Nugent coming to our next meeting? Dan, do you know?
I don't think he specifically indicated that he was available, but also didn't say that he couldn't make it when I gave him the date.
Okay.
I just know he couldn't make it tonight.
He'd be here at the next meeting? Okay, all right. I think we can, most of my questions regarding the bridges on that are how it ties into the cross-country project. From a timing standpoint and everything else is one dependent on the other and all that, so.
I can talk a little bit about that, is that Glenn was extremely surprised that they're talking crushed stone now for that. He thought it was just trails, so he wanted to be very clear that FONA is proposing just the bridges, and that we have, I think that basically we don't support the idea of crushed stone in there. We'd like to see just the trail.
Well, I think the crushed stone was not proposed for the, and again, we're off on a different
So
project, but
if
yeah.
that's different, then that's.
No, but it's fair to know, because I know they're somewhat tied together, because the cross-country trails can't run without the bridge in place, at least on a portion of the proposed track. Is that correct, Terry? Correct. Yeah, okay. Steeplechase, right? That's, okay, all right. But the plan would be to do that as soon as possible, and I guess it would be, assuming the cross-country project gets funded, your project would be completed in time for cross-country season, or at least in conjunction with that.
It's great to know. Thanks for that. So, yeah. That helps us prioritize.
I think it's,
because
well, we're talking 400 man-hours at Mazzarenko. I don't know who's going to be left to swing a hammer over at Usler. So
we'll put Mazzarenko, but we have Glennie Woodlot also planned in there, our own self-funded project. So again, it's great to line this all up and know that now in the winter. So
go track down some Eagle Scouts, right? Get them busy.
Sounds great.
Okay. And does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Okay. All right. That was our last agenda item for tonight. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Tracy. All those in favor? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time tonight.
That was a fun meeting.
That was a fun meeting. I prefer this room.